Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Made for More podcast. Ali Nitschke here, leadership communication expert, and I cannot wait to share today's topic with you. It is all about poise under pressure. Now, if you're familiar with my work, you might suspect that this is based on my best-selling book on Grunt, Grit and Grace, and you would be correct. What you might not know is this is also one of our signature keynotes as well. It's designed for leaders to be able to eloquently remain cool, calm, and collected when they are having those tough conversations. So whether it is a courageous conversation, whether they're presenting to a team or an all hands or perhaps even the board. But how do you maintain poise under pressure? Now, there is a persistent myth in leadership that some people are simply born calm. And, I've had four children and I think they all have different dispositions. However, when it comes to the skill of poise under pressure, it is absolutely a learned behavior that every single one of you can learn. So you might know the type of people, these ones. You can recognize them. They walk into the room composed. They speak with clarity. They look unflappable when tension rises and the stakes are high. We often label these types of people as, in quotes, natural leaders when we quietly assume poise is at that personality trait and something that you either have or you don't. Now, that assumption, of course, is incorrect. It is wrong. Poise under pressure is not a personality. It is a practice. I'm so excited to jump into this thinking, and I really want you to think about, if you're a leader and you've ever thought about why can that person stay calm? And I feel like I'm one sentence away from snapping, or for some of my clients, one sentence away from being a wobbly mess, or one sentence away from falling into a bundle of tears, or perhaps, if you are someone that speaks to your team or in front of large groups, or perhaps to board, and all of a sudden your voice doesn't quite sound like your own, then this is the one for you. If you have ever left a meeting thinking, I didn't show up as my best self, stick with me because I've got a few ideas and tips on how you can do that. And this is going to give you some framework that you can actually train yourself to have some more poise under pressure. Now, in executive environments in particular, this seems to be where the stakes are higher. Pressure is not an exception. It actually becomes the baseline. Decisions, they carry a lot of weight. Conversations are often multi-layered, multifaceted. Time is compressed and visibility as an exec is constant. And yet, so many leaders treat composure as a byproduct rather than a capability. So here's what I've observed over a couple of decades, actually, of leadership work. And this has been working with large organizations, small organizations, wonderful high performing teams, and also, the toxic, air quotes again, toxic teams. And when it comes to these leaders, the ones who remain calm when others react and usually done more work, not less. Their steadiness is not accidental. It is earned. Poise under pressure is the outward expression of invisible disciplines, and those disciplines, I'm getting myself tongue-tied, and those disciplines sit across three dimensions that rarely get spoken about altogether. So that is effort, endurance, and elegance or eloquence, depending on what it is and who you are. In my work and in the work that you're probably thinking and familiar with, that you've heard me speak about before, I call this grunt, grit, and grace. For background, I used to be a professional ballet dancer, and a few years ago, someone said, what's some of the lessons that you learn in ballet that have to do with leadership? And at about the same time, I was really sick of reading AFL books and NFL books and sporting books, very male-centric sporting books that talked about leadership. And I thought, hang on a minute, ballet is an elite sport as well. Why hasn't anyone written any leadership books about ballet? So I wrote Grunt, Grit and Grace. It's actually, I think, the only ballet book. Hang on a sec. The only ballet book, here it is, if you are watching on YouTube, the only ballet book on leadership. So it is called Grunt, Grit and Grace, Lessons in Leadership from the Dance Floor to the Boardroom. It's been out since 2023. If you haven't read it, absolutely grab a copy. I'll pop the link in the show notes, but it is a wonderful book on the mindset of high performance, of excellence, of discipline, of really how do we maintain poise. And in performance disciplines like ballet, audiences only ever see the finished product, the grace, the lightness, the ease, the easiness. And what they don't see is that continual repetition, the strain, the corrections, and the relentless refinement that makes the performance look effortless. And leadership really is no different. So when leaders navigate conflict without escalating it, when they make clear decisions in uncertainty, when they hold their center while everyone else loses theirs, that moment is supported by hundreds of unseen moments beforehand. Let me repeat that. Hundreds of unseen moments that have happened before. It is the practice. Poise is not the absence of pressure. I think in this day and age, we all have a level of pressure depending on your capacity as a human. Are you a high capacity human, a HCH? Will really depend on how much pressure you can withstand. But for these leaders, it's the familiarity with pressure of going, I've done this before and I can do it again. When there are leaders who are appearing calm and have rehearsed that discomfort, they have learned how to respond when those stakes are high. They've practiced staying present when it could and would be easier to react. No easy feat if you've been in that position before. This isn't talent. This is not some natural born skill that you only get if you've got a particular genome. It is training, it is conditioning, it is practice. And now I wanted to share some of that training with you. So the first one is grunt. Grunt is the part of leadership that most people want to bypass. It is the self-awareness work. It is the uncomfortable reflection, the learning of new skills that initially feel awkward and unnatural. If you've done any kind of personal development, I often joke with some of my friends that, it's the slap in the face that you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to do it. But on the other side of that is profound insight and an awareness that you didn't have previously. So grunt is understanding what your triggers are, what your defaults are, what your patterns are under stress. And in leadership, grunt can sometimes look like practicing difficult conversations before you need to have them. This is really prevalent in a lot of the workshops that we do on courageous conversations, is actually try it somatically, try it out in your body before you're stressed out, the stakes are high, you're sitting across from someone who's highly emotive. Practice those difficult conversations before you need them. You can also download our Courageous Conversations guide by heading to madeformore.com.au/resources if you're looking for help with that. This is also what grunt looks like in leadership. It's learning how your nervous system responds to pressure. It is around developing decision-making discipline when information is incomplete. And we know that change is happening so rapidly that often leaders are having to make decisions when they don't have the full picture yet. It's also around building that emotional literacy. So this is not just technical competence. If you are someone that really struggles to name feelings, I highly recommend two things. One is jump onto Google and look up the emotional wheel. It's like a diagram and it's got concentric circles that shows all of the different emotions that we experience. The other resource I would recommend is Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart. And she, if you're familiar with Brené Brown, she very eloquently explains all of the different emotions, human emotions that we go through. And it is a beautiful coffee table book. It's absolutely divine. So if you are someone who is currently emotionally illiterate and you're looking to increase your emotional literacy, that would be my two go-tos. There is very little recognition for this phase, and that is the grunt phase. No one applauds the leader for sitting in the discomfort and choosing self-regulation over ego, apart from if you know if you're one of my coaching clients, and I'm like, yes, go you. And yet, when we don't have grunt, without that grunt, everything else collapses because what I notice is that poise without grunt is performance. Poise built on grunt is substance. And I think for most leaders that I know, yes, we want high performance, but we don't want to be continually performing. We want to have that substance to be able to continue to elevate, to continue to lead authentically in a really courageous and strong way. So if you have ever watched a leader look calm, but their team feels unsafe, that's what that probably is. It's optics, and grunt is what makes poise real. IRL, real, not Instagram, real. The second part is grit. Grit is what keeps leaders present when pressure doesn't resolve quickly. This is where many capable leaders actually tend to falter. They're going, I've been hanging on, I've been white knuckling for a while, and I'm exhausted. They know what they need to be doing, but the consistency wanes when outcomes are slow, resistance appears, or the work becomes repetitive. So these people typically are the ones that understand what needs to happen and they quit too soon. Grit in leadership is not bravado, it is persistence without theatrics. It is the stuff that happens behind the scenes. It is staying engaged with your people during prolonged uncertainty. It is maintaining standards when energy dips. It is choosing composure repeatedly, not just once. Leaders who develop poise under pressure have a high tolerance for repetition, which is different to having a high tolerance for boredom. They understand that mastery comes from doing the same fundamentals well long after novelty has worn off. They're not chasing relief, they are building capacity. And I would love you to think about that moment when perhaps you say or an exec says something sharp in a meeting, and we've all been there, we've all sat there and gone, oh, and the room tightens and everyone watches the leader, and they have two options. They can regulate and lead or react and set the tone for the next 3 months. And I think for you, just understanding that that is the impact that either a react or a regulate can have. That moment is grit, where we choose how we want to show up as a leader. It's not the big speeches at the town halls. It's not the perfect curated LinkedIn post. It is that split second choice to stay grounded in your authenticity, to stay grounded in your own power and not react. And it takes practice because our nervous system wants to and respond, rather react. Third, is grace. Grace is the visible outcome. Finally, we get to see something. It's what teams experience as clarity, steadiness, and trust. Grace is the leader who doesn't rush to fill silence. When I work with my leaders, I say your best friend is a full stop and then a dot, dot, dot after that. So just wait. It is the executive who listens before responding. And I've mentioned this before. My mum used to say, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionately. This is so true when it comes to grace. The decision maker who can hold multiple perspectives without becoming overwhelmed. Grace is often mistaken for softness, another myth that needs busting. But in reality, grace is the product of strength. And if I link this back to ballet, some of the most graceful ballerinas that I have ever seen are the ones that are the strongest by far. They are the ones that have spent the most time at the bar, BARRE, not BARRE, the ballet bar. They're the ones that are literally blood, sweat, and tears, but they are the ones that look the most graceful because it takes so much practice and discipline to be able to make it look easy. It takes strength for leaders to stay regulated when the emotions rise. For leaders, it takes strength to remain kind without becoming permissive. For some of our leaders, it takes strength to lead without needing to dominate. Grace is not what you do instead of being decisive. It's how decisiveness lands without that collateral damage. I'll say that again. Grace is not what you do instead of being decisive. It's how decisiveness lands without collateral damage. Because you can be direct and still be safe to work with. You can be firm and still be respected. You can hold the line without making people feel small. That's grace. Now let's make it practical. That's what I'm all about. How do we go, okay, great idea, but how do we make it practical? And in complex organizations, Poise is not cosmetic. It directly impacts decision quality. Poise directly impacts psychological safety. It impacts trust in leadership and the speed at which teams recover from disruption. Now, I'm not sure about you, but in this day and age, in 2026, it would be hard for me to find any team who is not impacted or disrupted in any way. If you are wanting to help your team to navigate that faster, easier, then absolutely poise is the key for that. And leaders who lack poise often unintentionally transmit that urgency, that anxiety, or that volatility into the system. So if you are someone who is quite naturally anxious, or if you are feeling that kind of overwhelm of, everything is urgent and nothing is important, I'd really encourage you to think about your poise and how you are showing up for your team. And leaders with poise, they stabilize the system simply by how they show up. This is why boards will often trust certain leaders more than others, even when technical skill is comparable. Isn't that interesting? So when you present well, when you have poise under pressure, you are more trusted. And composure creates confidence. It's like this cycle, and confidence invites followership. And ultimately, that's what you're here to do. There's always good news. It's always a good news story. If poise were personality, it would be fixed, but because it is a practice, it is trainable. Isn't that good news? Every leader can increase their capacity for pressure. Every leader can learn to regulate before reacting, and every leader can cultivate a presence that steadies rather than agitates, not by bypassing the hard work, but really by embracing it. Grunt builds the foundation. Grit sustains the effort, and grace becomes the signature. And poise under pressure stops being something you admire in others and starts being something you embody yourself. I hope this episode landed with you. Here's a few things to take away and some ideas to think about. And it is around don't chase the calm, train the capacity to withstand disruption, because leadership doesn't rise to your intention when the room gets tense. It drops to your conditioning. And the most powerful thing you can do is build a conditioning that makes you a steady leader. If you want support in building your poise under pressure within your leadership team, within your executive group, reach out hello@madeformore.com.au. I also have this as a keynote to present to all staff, and also some of our programs and coaching talk on this as well. Until next time, lead with courage, clarity, and communication. Bye for now.